Welcome. In the second of our seminars, our local multiple sclerosis field officer will outline the issues and facts of living with multiple sclerosis and give some practical information on managing the systems with the assistance of two people who do actually live with multiple sclerosis here with us today. So thank you, and please welcome Gillian.
Thanks very much, everybody, and it does feel like karaoke with this big microphone in my mouth here. And yes, I'm one of the field workers working with the Multiple Sclerosis Wellington Society, and today I've got Dwelia Rendell here and Peter North. So I'm going to be running through a little bit of information as a background on multiple sclerosis, because I think living with MS, you need to understand what that condition is. And then I'll be passing over to Dwelia and Peter, who will actually be talking about how they manage it from their perspective. And we've got questions and answers at the end, and if anyone would like an information handout, please come and get one towards the end. So living with multiple sclerosis. First of all, what is MS? And as many of you may know, it's an autoimmune condition which affects the central nervous system. It causes what's called demyelation of the nerve fibre, and this leads to hardening or sclerosis, which occurs in different sites within the brain. And as a result of that, because it affects the different neural pathways, people can experience a number of different symptoms, which is why it's quite a nebulous condition, because it affects people so very differently. Around about 1 in 1,000 people in NZ have MS. Does anyone know, if you put a show of hands, of someone who has multiple sclerosis? So generally someone knows of someone who has it or has it themselves. Normally diagnosed in people between the ages of 20 to 40, although that does change, and generally affects almost twice as many women as men. The further south you go, the increased incidence of MS. So there's different types of MS, and in general there's three typical patterns that can be recognised. Relapsing or remitting MS, which is where the symptoms may be apparent and then they go away. So people with relapsing or remitting MS can experience what is called a flare-up or an exacerbation, but then generally they have a period of recovery. Secondary progressive, so after initial course of relapsing remitting, then they may move into secondary progressive, where the symptoms become more and more debilitating over several years. And also primary progressive in about 10% of cases, where there's no relapsing period. So the onset is pretty fast, and it can lead to significant debilitation. So as mentioned before, the symptoms of MS, they range really broadly. So what's common for one person can be very, very different for another. Some people will only experience mild symptoms over a course of a lifetime, and others may be very extreme. So it's a very frustrating condition to get a handle on, because a lot of it's uncertainty and unknown. Most symptoms of MS usually occur in a pattern of relapse, followed by a period of remission. So what are some of the common symptoms that people might experience? One of the first type of symptoms is sensory, that this is where people often will get their diagnosis. Something doesn't feel right. It might be patches of numbness or tingling. Vision problems is also another common one, especially at the start. Optical neuritis, difficulty with the vision. So if someone's eyesight is actually normally pretty normal, but strange things are happening with their vision, that can be a sign of MS. Fatigue is a big one, and it's also really difficult because you can't see fatigue. So people might look normal on the outside, but experience huge fatigue, which is a really difficult thing to manage. Muscle spasm, stiffness, weakness or heaviness, all things to look out for in a diagnosis. Memory or concentration issues, that whole brain fog. And also emotional and mood implications that can form into depression and or anxiety. and a number of other symptoms. So there's a big range, but not every person will be affected with all of these. So important to go and get a diagnosis. So we do have a number of support links into wellbeing. A person's general practitioner is their primary healthcare provider. However, we do have field workers such as myself who can help people in the community and also help link them into services with neurology, physiotherapy and other allied health conditions. So the field workers not only support the person with MS but also their families or whānau, and we have a number of support options through the Society with information and support groups. So hopefully that gives everyone in a nutshell, a little bit of a background on MS and what it may look like. And we do have some information sheets here if anyone would like one. So I'm going to pass over to Dwelia, who's going to talk about MS from her perspective. Thanks, Dwelia.
Thank you, Gillian. I'll try standing for a start. My name, if you didn't hear Gillian say it, is Dwelia Rendell. Multiple sclerosis is a funny disease, and I often think how lucky I am that I have a good sense of humour and a well-developed sense of the ridiculous, especially in my day-to-day life. With symptoms so varied and of a greater or lesser duration, what is possible one day may be impossible the next. And when you add in the fact that our brains and our dreams don't necessarily coincide with reality, people with MS can have some great fun just living. As an example, I spent 3 hours trying to put down some masking tape round a terribly tiny area in my home that needed a touch of paint. I couldn't do it. I wasted yards of masking tape. It curled up on itself, it curled round me, it did everything. Finally, my neighbour came and did it in 5 minutes. Then I tried to do the painting. So the minute my hand saw a paintbrush, it thought, I'll shake now. So that was the end of that idea. As I say, you have to laugh at the ridiculousness of some of these things. And don't ask me about the number of times I've dreamt about vacuuming, cleaning out cupboards, washing floors, when the reality, thank God, is that I haven't done them for at least 15 years. The person that you see standing before you today is, I believe, the result of what are called disease-modifying drugs. Now, the criteria for receiving such drugs in New Zealand are very, very tight. And I'm extremely fortunate that I have been able to receive them. I'm also extremely fortunate that they have worked, because they don't work for everybody, and they certainly don't seem to affect everybody the same. I've been on drugs now for about 10 years, and I've had a slow but sure improvement in almost every aspect of the effects of MS on me. For the first 3 or 4 years, I was on a drug called beta interferon, which, for the learned, is a sub-cut injection every 2 days. That means subcutaneously, and you're expected to do it yourself. However, I developed pretty nasty reactions in my injection site, and I came to loathe the sight of a needle. So the very kindly district nurses stepped in and began giving me my injections every 2nd day. For a number of reasons, it was suggested to me that I might do better to transfer to Avenex, which is a once-a-week intramuscular injection. And again, the lovely district nurses would come round and put a shot in my behind every week. Now, over the time that I've been on the drugs, I have slowly improved. 10 or 12 years ago, I was planning for life in a wheelchair. I still am planning for a life in a wheelchair. It just hasn't arrived yet, for which I am most blessed. The path to diagnosis can be long and torturous, and in my case, I started showing symptoms at about 19. I was a jolly good faller overer, but was not finally diagnosed until I was 45. Sometimes, I have to tell you that that when I did finally get a diagnosis, I was utterly wrapped. I wasn't going mad, I wasn't a hypochondriac, I was perfectly normal. I just happened to have a disease which had so many huge range of symptoms that I could fit myself in somewhere. However, with earlier diagnosis, I must say I do feel a bit for the people who are being diagnosed early, because you then have to make such life-affecting decisions about things like having children, getting married, etc., etc. When I had to face those decisions, I didn't know I had MS, so I made them entirely without knowing that. Maybe I would have made other decisions had I known that I had a disease which could incapacitate me altogether. However, no one can tell what our future is going to be. The doctors, the nurses, the field workers, ourselves. So we just have to go on. Peter will be talking about symptoms and how he copes with them, but I'd like to say a few words about fatigue, which is something that I personally have experienced quite often. With your fatigue, when you are fatigued, you may have to rest up to 20 hours a day. And I don't mean sitting in a chair, I mean in bed. But oddly enough, you don't sleep much because sleep's very hard. And you often won't sleep while you're resting. It's exhausting. You use all your energy going to the loo, being aided in your shower, getting dressed. Which is why sometimes I didn't bother getting dressed, because it was just too much of an effort. However effective the disease-modifying drugs have been for me, and we know that they have been very effective, I still would not be able to get by without the help of very many people. I speak here of my daughter and her husband and my grandchildren and the adaptations they all have had to make to live with my disease too. My neighbours and my friends have been magnificent, bringing me meals, helping me out for years now. And I'm exceptionally grateful. My caregivers, the field officers, when I've been really crook and calling on them constantly for advice and support and understanding, I've always had it. And even people such as the taxi drivers who come and pick me up with their consideration and care and willingness to help me in and out of their taxis as needed. And it's all these people I want to say a really big thank you for too, because without them I wouldn't be able to live a normal life as I do. Thank you.
Over to Peter North.
Hi. Well, I'm talking about how I deal with my symptoms of MS. I'd like to say drugs is the answer, but it isn't. Cure, well, there is no such thing as a cure that I'm aware of. So I'm here to give some practical information on managing symptoms. And so I thought I'd start and just look at my day. I get out of bed in the morning. I have a slatted headboard on my bed so that I can grab it to turn over. Just simple little adaptations. I think adaptations to the symptoms you have is going to be what it's all about. So on the next slide we see after I get out of bed, the first thing that's going to happen is I'm going to get in my wheelchair, because that's how I get around. How do you get a wheelchair? Well, the first thing is you need some professional advice. Either see an occupational therapist or a physiotherapist who will give you some ideas on things you might need. At the moment I don't need an electric chair, I don't need a banana board for transferring, but maybe I made an adaptation. These are sailing gloves, they're leather gloves. They help me, particularly if the wheels are wet and your hands slip on them or something like that. How do you pump up your tyres? You might get given a pump like for a bike pump, and that's good for the first 30 pounds, but the next 30 pounds is hard work. So go to the service station or buy an electric pump for your car. That's the adaptations that I've made. We then move on to look at the bathroom. Again, I've had professional advice from the occupational therapists and people like that. Some of the things I do, instead of using soap, which slips out of my hands and bounces around the shower stall, I use liquid soap and stuff like that. I have to keep the floor dry when I get out of the shower, else my feet are going to slip. And that's when I'm going to fall down. I have fallen down and I don't like it. Well, falling down's not so bad. It's the getting back up that's a real problem. And then we go from the bathroom, I dress. And so I wear socks. Maybe I'd wear socks in bed. What I do is I spasm from time to time. If I don't cut my toenails, they're going to be like a cheese grater going down my skin. So make sure you keep up those simple things like cutting your toenails. Or maybe you could, if you're too lazy to do that, you could put some socks on, that's fine. And then perhaps you go into the bathroom, you want to transfer to the toilet, it's a slippery floor. Socks just don't have the grip. I wear a t-shirt because it's got no buttons, it's no hassle, it's easy to put on. If I'm going to sneeze, there goes my handkerchief, just like that. And it also acts as my pouch. If I want to carry something, I just shove something up the front, and so I can carry a newspaper or something there. Because why would I want to do that? Wheelchair. Got to use my hands to wheel the wheelchair. Can't carry anything when I want to move. So after I've gotten dressed, I'm still dressing here. So maybe I'd put my watch on. I could put on the Rolex. Wonderful, right? Gold face, gold hands, no contrast, so hard to read. So go and get a digital with backlighting and stuff like that. Again, adaptations. Anyway, and then I put my glasses on, and I wear spectacles because I'm getting old. I also had optic neuritis. The glasses are not going to correct for nerve damage. So I still have some problems in one eye, but I have another problem, my age, so my eyes aren't working so well. So the other thing to note here is just because you've got MS doesn't mean to say you can't have other problems as well. So if ever you do feel that you have something, don't say it's MS. It may well be some other thing overlaying on it. And then after I've gotten dressed, we might go for a drive in the car. So about 1995, things were catching up on me, and so I got an automatic because I couldn't drive a manual anymore. And then later I got some hand controls, and now I've moved to a station wagon. Has advantages, it's flat in the back, so I don't have to lift things over a lift to slide things in and out of the back of the car. And it's got all the bits and pieces I'd like. I can't really turn around to easily see where I'm going when I'm backing, so I use mirrors. I'm getting to the stage where I think a camera might be worth having as well in the back. So after I've been in the car, then maybe I'll go on public transport. There's a bus goes past my gate every 15 minutes, but I can't get on it because it hasn't got accessibility. There is a thing called a total mobility card, where the local council or the regional council will contribute 50% of your cab fare. So because I can't get on a bus, they'll subsidise my cab fare if I need to do that instead. If you want to fly on a plane, for example, they wouldn't let me on because they said, how are you going to get to the toilet? So, because I'm a male, I can use a Eurodome, which is sort of a bit like an Irish condom. There's a hole at one end that you plug in to take the effluent away, and the other end's got sticky tape on it, so it doesn't come off. And that was the solution, that was the workaround, because once you're in a plane seat, trying to get to the toilet or get into the toilet just doesn't work. Again, you're going to rely on your caregivers, your partners, to help you when you travel. Most things I can do myself, but there's going to be a place where you can't get up a lip or a stair or something. You're going to have to rely on others, and indeed you're going to have to rely on others for heaps of other things. So you've got to give away any sense of self-sufficiency that you might have used to have. Doesn't happen anymore. Then after our public transport, what else did I do? I used to live in a house, two-storied house. Should I put a lift in the house to get up to the second story? Now so I sold the house, we moved, I live on the flat now, on a concrete section, there's no lawns to mow. The house is plastic, so I don't have to paint it. Except it actually has some barge boards on it that are wooden. Didn't notice that when I bought it. Anyway, there we go. If you want to check out ideas for building things, have a look at New Zealand Standard 4121. And after all these wonderful things that I do, I want to relax sometimes, and I go sailing with an outfit called Sailability, which is sailing for the disabled. Either you can be mentally or physically disabled, you can go with somebody, or you can go by yourself. So over here in Evans Bay, and also out at Seaview. And then from after my lifestyle and my relaxation, I want to just mention miracle cures. Somebody's going to tell you there's a miracle cure. The first one I came across was Carrie Loader. She's an English lady. She was a bit of a depressive, and she used to drink heaps of Coke. So her cure was to take the phenylalanine that found in Coke. Because she was a bit depressed, she was on an antidepressant, and I don't know why she had the vitamin B12. Some people say it's good for fatigue. Anyway, she had the Carrie Loader formula, and said it was going to be great, and people started taking this combination. She committed suicide in 2009 at the age of 48 because her recipe didn't actually work, and she was getting to the stage where she was going to be taken into a care facility. You may have heard the concept of evidence-based medicine. Well, in fact, Scotia Pharmaceuticals did have a look at this drug, and there is a research paper. They did some work, and we'll go on to the next page from here because we're running out of time. And we'll talk about colostrum. In 2009, some of you might have read the illustrious journal Women's Day. In the Australian version, they said, or publication, they said that, quote, there was a miracle MS recovery. I'm out of my wheelchair. And it went on. You eventually could find out there's a fine product available. It's colostrum, available from New Image. And you can purchase it so long as you join the multi-level marketing system scheme. Another cure that's come out of recent times, which isn't a drug or a concoction, is chronic cerebrospinal venous insufficiency. An Italian surgeon, his wife got MS. He thought maybe it's something to do with blood flows. So he's got this wonderful cure, beautiful paper, great idea. However, the State University of New York at Buffalo and Texas University have tried to see if they can reproduce his ideas, and it isn't really there. So, back to the beginning. There is no cure for MS that I'm aware of. If you've got one, tell me. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got time for a couple of questions if there are some.
Thank you. I had to spend some time in a wheelchair last year with Achilles problems, and I was absolutely staggered that they're not as easy to handle. You need a lot of strength to push them around, especially over carpets. You say you've got a lot of upper body strength, which would indicate that it's mainly lower body problems that you've got. Is this usual? I mean, how does a person get on if they haven't got the coordination and strength to handle a wheelchair?
Sorry.
The answer is mentioned caregivers, somebody to push you around, electric, and those are the only options. Even I can't get up some slopes, regardless of your strength. I talked about anti-tips. After a while, your centre of gravity moves, and the chair will flip right over. So, and it's happened to me. It does happen, and your head hits the ground. Yeah. So you've got to realise that some things you just can't do. Yes, indeed, it is harder on carpet than this sort of floor or concrete. And if you can't do it yourself, you've either got somebody. You've got to have somebody, your partner or your caregiver, and that's what a lot of people depend on. Or the other option is electric. And after that, there is no option. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just wonder, are you, well, if you can describe it as fortunate in having upper body strength, or is this usual in MS? That you do, that the legs go first, and you do...
I have no data. I can't tell you. I suspect from the people I've met that it is. Yeah. But I've met a lot of people who are in a wheelchair and are still trying to push themselves around, and they're limited at that. So, but I can't, I don't have enough experience. Sorry.
Thank you.
Is there another question?
We've been told today that it's not curable, but what progress is being made by neurological experts on ascertaining what the cause of this weakness is?
Very briefly and somewhat facetiously, when I was first diagnosed around about 1990, somebody said to me, a professor said to me, oh, it'll be about 10 years and then we'll have a cure. So that's over 20 years ago, and they're still telling us that in about 10 years they'll have a cure. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not giving you a scientific answer. I'm just saying what the reality is with people telling you about cures.
Hello there. I was wondering, if you had a fall out of your wheelchair and you're on your own, do you have some way of setting off an alarm of some kind to bring it to attention? Like wearing one of those little alarms around your neck?
Yeah. So I have fallen out sometimes, and I rely on the general public, a passer-by. So if I did fall out, yeah.
At home, I don't have one of those medical bracelets, and it wouldn't work in the community because you're too far away from your
Oh, right, from where
base.
you reside.
But I do carry a cell phone.
Right.
They're a great invention, and it's probably, it's my Linus rug, I suppose. I carry that around with me to call people if I have a problem.
Thank you for the questions, and thank you very much. I'm sorry, yes, we've got to finish now because we do need to give people a break, and at 2 o'clock we've got Dr. Helen Fitzsimons. So thank you again for your presentations and for sharing your daily challenges. Very much appreciated.